Live, right? Oh, that's live.
Okay. All right, there we are. Good morning, I am Hanwhan Welch from Beats One. I am joined by the cast of Live by Night for iTunes and a Facebook chat panel. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm joined by Alfay, Sarah Miller, Chris Messina, Zoe Saldana, and Ben Affleck. Gentlemen, thank you, and ladies, thank you so much for taking the time. We'll be fielding some questions from fans around the world, and let's just get right into it. Dave Alicia on iTunes, Facebook asks, Ben, what drove you to bring part of Live by Night, and what makes it different from the other movies that you've done? Sort of, this is the second Dennis Lehane novel that you've adapted. At what part did you sort of realize that this is something you wanted to get into?
You know, I had just finished another movie, and I was watching a bunch of old movies, and I was on this kind of old movie kick, and I got sent this book, and right away I thought, like, oh, I know just how to make this. I want to make a love letter to these kinds of great gangster movies. Sure. And I wanted to make a classic gangster movie, and that sounded like a lot of fun, and fun to do all the period stuff, and the costumes and the sets, and, and there was car chases and shootouts and all that fun, pulpy kind of classic stuff, and it kind of just jumped off the page. It was written in a very cinematic way. I think Dennis writes, I think that's why his books have been adapted by so many different people, is because they're very, very cinematic.
And you talk about the history of the genre. Here we are, like, more than 100 years later, and noir films and true crime and this stuff is still being made. Films are, and it's just still appealing. So what do you guys think? What's the appeal of the genre decades and decades and centuries later?
I think that, when I watch the film, to me, it has this kind of fantasy quality, even though, it's not. It's something that, really happened, but also the 1920s are a time that you kind of read about and hear about as this, like, it's very glamorous, and also gangsters, and it's just something that people, I think, kind of dream about and kind of picture themselves. At least you kind of picture yourself in that time, and what would that have been like? And I don't know, it's appealing to people. So.
Yeah, it's a sexy time. The gangsters are doing things that you normally can't do in real life. So it's kind of fun to watch that and watch them get away with stuff, and it was a great time period.
And we've seen sort of like the crime genre and the gangster genre look at cities like New York and Chicago and Los Angeles, and this is the first time we've ever sort of seen that sort of 1920s era take place in Ybor in Miami. What was sort of stylistically to you? What was the most important thing to capture?
Well, I thought that was, like we say, we've seen New York and Boston and Baltimore and Philly, and we get that whole gangster thing, but to put it in Florida, where especially when Florida was still being carved up, and when you had all these different ethnicities and immigrants and groups competing for influence and hegemony against the existing white Protestant establishment, and here you have, Cubans and Puerto Ricans and Dominicans and Italians and Irish all, wanting to control certain parts of it. I thought it was a nice microcosm for how the country was made, really, and built by immigrants.
It's interesting to me too because the film sort of reflects a lot of stuff that's happening contemporarily. There's like this sort of collision between, like you said, white Protestant, and there's a collision between like immigrants and sort of the KKK in the film. And I just feel like, did you guys have any idea when you were sort of shooting the film that it would be sort of prescient, sort of where we are now versus when you guys started shooting?
I think that we could be doing a film like this 20 years from now and probably still feel that they're topics of like a period piece that we can still identify with. I do like the portrayal of it, that even at that time, if you live it through the eyes of Joe, Ben's character, it felt really modern, like his way of thinking, and it was very like, I blend in. So there is a kind of empathy that his character had walking down the streets of Ybor that I think you haven't really seen in other gangster movies or films that touch topics as sensitive as racism, discrimination, and violence. And I feel like that gave it a very contemporary feel because it was more of an accurate depiction. I think that those times seem glamorous in magazines, but it must have sucked really bad. To live in an era where you couldn't have a beer after work because you were being judged by the system, and you couldn't go out because you feel like you might get gunned down, where your life expectancy was rather short. Because if you weren't dying by gun violence, you were dying by polio. So it's you had all these threats to your life, and yet there was this resilience that people had. When at night they just really lived, and that was beautiful, I feel.
Just trailed off. No, I was like, I'm just going through diseases that you could have died of. I was like, polio, typhus. You could have definitely gotten typhus. So Camilla Emanuel from Facebook asks, how do you describe the importance of female characters within the movie? Zoe and Elle and Annie, you guys all have these incredible characters that have these really, really remarkable arcs. Where do you sort of start when you're trying to bring these characters to life?
For me, I started really with the accent, which I very, very kind of thick Irish accent. There was a lot in the book that was really clear about the background to all of our characters, and Ben's adaptation, again, really alluded to who they were and where they were going. And as a director, as someone who is just incredibly available and on hand, having written the script, just so in touch with the material that we were really guided through it. But it was really refreshing to read a film with 3 distinct female characters in it. And as you say, they all have arcs. Where my character begins and where she ends is just a huge, huge journey to make. And that's kind of the joy of acting, I think.
Yeah.
What about your character?
Well, I started kind of, I would talk to Ben about her, and obviously when I first met with Ben, I was younger, and I read the script, and I was like, there's no way I'm gonna get the part, because she was kind of like in her early 20s. It kind of said in the script, and I was like, there's no way. I didn't think I was going to, and then.
And I waited.
Yeah, then we waited, and but it was actually, and then it was kind of perfect, because when I filmed the film, obviously Loretta, she does kind of, you see her more innocent, and she does kind of become a young woman, and at the stage of, I was around 17, about to turn 18 when I filmed it, so I felt like I was on the cusp of that, so I understood what she was going through, because you're still a child, and you feel that way, but then you have all these responsibilities, and you've seen more, and so it's a strange time, and I think she was going through that as well. And also she turns into an evangelist preacher with a lot of things to say.
There's a lot of other stuff that
there's a lot of
happens
other stuff. So Amy Semple McPherson was this lady from the 1920s who was a preacher, and I did a lot of research on her, and there were some YouTube clips of her speaking against alcohol and during the Prohibition, so I based a lot of it on her. Even the wardrobe, her white dresses and crosses were based on her.
Zoe, what about you? Where did you sort of start mining for your character outside of the book?
I mean, Graciela in the novel is a lot more like gangster. I like the Graciela that ended up in the movie, which was a person that has seen a lot. By the time she meets Joe, she's already been married to a gangster, and she's fled a country that's overpopulated with injustice. And now coming into a place where she feels that she's much more cultured, and she feels that she's, it's not like she feels like she's above it, but there is a separation, spiritual separation that she naturally has towards the world around her, and she's made a choice to sort of just kind of find a way to live the last years of her life, just redeeming herself from all the things that she's done before. So I feel like when she meets Joe, she's been on this path, and she encourages him to do that, and I feel like she was the only character that presented a voice of reason for him, that encouraged him. It's like, okay, don't live by night, per se, just, and if you have to, find a way to give back. And that was a character that I think I haven't played. I've been in space for 10 years, kicking too much ass, and so to play a woman that owns her womanhood and owns accepting the fact that she's fallen in love and she's going to live in this vulnerable state, was very beautiful and empowering.
Yeah, redemption is a huge theme throughout the entire film, and it was just, I thought it was very well done and very well tackled. The film itself is absolutely beautifully shot. Like any single frame, you could take it and hang it on the wall in a gallery. I know that you guys recreated 1920s Ybor in Georgia. What was that like for you guys shooting and directing?
Well, Georgia has a tax rebate.
Yeah,
so
sure.
That's why we were in Georgia, and it was about, a couple hundred miles north of where it really took place.
Right.
But actually, southern coastal Georgia is a lot more wild than Florida is just all strip malls, and you can't go anywhere where you get that sense of, unless you go to the Everglades or something, of raw natural beauty. And I wanted a sense of an uncultivated, unexplored place, something wild where you saw wild animals. And so we found this place, and then we built Ybor City on this street in this small town, and I think we got away with it.
No, it looks beautiful. I think, Chris, your character, you said it's the Harlem of the South, and it was just that first scene where you sort of see Ybor lit up at night just really just stuck with you.
Yeah, that was, when we walk into the club, yeah, that was fun to shoot. That was one of those moments where you're like, wow, I'm in this movie, this is so cool. Walking into the club next to Ben with a cigar in my mouth. Dream.
And not only that, but you underwent a pretty significant physical transformation for the film.
I did, yeah. In the book, the character's described as pretty round.
Yeah.
And standing next to this guy and being his enforcer, it seemed like the only way to go. Couldn't get much taller. So I had to put on 40 pounds. I started to do it. I showed up at a camera test, and Ben was excited, and I wanted to make him happy, so I kept going. I kept eating.
It was fun, don't lie.
It was fun. Oh, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of pasta and beer. I had a beer at my nightstand, so I'd wake up to pee in the middle of the night. I just chug a beer. And
You're really suffering for the art.
so, it's a lot of fun.
That's amazing. So as actors and artists, do you find it's easier to work with a director who kind of knows what it's like to be both, in front of and behind the camera?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you take it.
No, I just...
No, it's amazing to watch him do it. I mean, for me, this whole experience for me, because I'm the only other actor in the film besides Ben that was there from beginning to end. So not only watching all these great actors and plenty more that aren't here, Chris Cooper, Brendan Gleeson, Matt Mayer, these guys come in and just kill it. And then to watch him to put on all these different hats. He's writer, producer, director, star of the film.
And actual hats.
And
The hats.
stress-free.
Yeah, actual hats,
Yeah.
To watch him do that and these guys do that, it was really like being in a master class film school. It was an amazing experience.
And someone who has the patience because they know that it's, it can be a really neurotic experience to turn up. There are 150 people that you've never met before, and you have to bare your soul often, which sounds every time we talk about acting it sounds pretentious, but to have someone that's empathetic towards that. There are two schools of directors, and some really don't like actors, and that can be challenging, and you can get somewhere because of that, but Ben is just the easiest, most lovely person to work with.
Good thing he's not here.
It's true.
I'm going to take some user-submitted questions from Facebook. From Facebook, we have Tom Tiernan asking, when reading a script, what process as an actor do you use in order to portray that character to sort of make him stand out or feel different?
This is to any of us?
I think this is for everybody.
Oh, I don't know if you think of it that you want to stand out or be different. You want to, and every process is entirely different depending on the script and the. But I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're looking. I mean, you want people to like you. You want people to like your character, the film, or understand the plight of your character. But you're not looking to stand out. You're looking to play the scene and serve the story.
Yeah. But on reading a script, what process an actor do you use in order to portray, or process? You mean what is your research? What is your approach to starting to sort of compose him?
Yeah, I mean, you have source material here, but do you ever what other assets do you have at your disposal, your toolbox?
National Geographic. I love watching animals and choosing an animal for the character that I'm playing. Have you ever met people?
Who was Graciela? What was she?
She was a cat.
Yeah.
you know, she was
Like,
very...
I knew it.
But it was because in that era, women were elegant and they put great importance in your physical appearance to be in public places. So that meant that there was a way of gliding that, and I have to thank my husband, because I would have made her into like, well, she's Cuban, so she's hard and she's this and she's that. Because my roots are Caribbean, but my husband is like, well, it's 1920, so you have to not romanticize what that era was about, but be influenced by the food, the way people ate, the way they spoke to each other, the way they crossed each other on a Sunday morning, heading to church or to the post office. Like, people dress differently. They weren't with broken jeans, and so that dictates, you know, a kind of demeanor in a person. And sometimes by studying animals, it's easier for me to understand the physicality of that character.
Sure. Sienna, what about you?
I love the research. That's my favorite bit, being forensic on that. So for this, watching old movies, annoying my Irish friends with phone calls, really depressing myself with some good Ken Loach, and then like stock photography, stock footage. YouTube's amazing for kind of digging and investigating, and then yeah, and just anywhere you can kind of find anything just to add layers and imagining where they've come from, what they've been through, how would that affect, you know, it can be quite nice and psychological, the investigation. I like that part.
I've got another question from Facebook. This is from Asia Dom. What was the most intense and emotional scene in the movie for you guys to film? Or to direct, rather?
The most intense scene for me was the scene where I blackmailed Chris Cooper. That was pretty intense. He played it really well, and I really felt like I was crushing this guy as he was sitting there. It was intense.
Tony, what about you?
I think it was Joe attending his, like, just going to see his father and at his grave, missing, just not being there for when his father passed. That was really difficult to watch.
Sure.
For me, I love the scene. I get to warn Ben's character about some trouble that's headed our way, and I love the scene. It was fun to shoot, and that was yeah.
I had a scene that was kind of a betrayal-y type moment without giving away too much that meant I had to cry from about 8 a.m. till 10 p.m., which was intense. Keep it going and, you know, start on your coverage, and then there's like 17 other people in the show and you're like, want to be generous. I'm like, there's so much cigarettes all day, you know. And then you come out and you're like, such a good day at work. I'm a weirdo.
Elle, what about you?
For me, there's a scene in a diner when, at the very end, this is kind of the last time you see my character, and Ben and Ben's character, they kind of run into each other and have this discussion, and it kind of turns into, it's a lot of emotions, and it was kind of a long scene. I think that was my last day. I don't know that I filmed that. I don't remember, but I think so. It felt like, like that scene, I was like, oh, I'm glad that was done. It was a hard one, but it was really fun.
There's so much unspoken in that scene, in that final scene in the diner between you and Ben. It was very heavy to watch. And the final scene, the crescendo, obviously I don't want to get anything away, but like that final scene, just going in the elevator was just like, it was very, very well done. We have another question from India this time, Aditya Goom. Ben, what was it like to both act with and, you know, direct this amazing cast?
You know, I was really lucky. I got everybody, all my first choice people, and I got this amazing cast. And really, the truth is, once you cast people, you just sort of let them go and give them freedom and give them support if they need it, but give them the opportunity to do what they can do their best job. You know, there's no worse feeling as an actor than going on the set and doing your scene and then going home and being like, fuck, that's how I should have done it. You know what I mean? Like,
Duck, that's how you say it. Yeah.
It's Facebook, you can say.
Duck it.
So I wanted them to be able to feel like they got it all out on set.
Got another question from Facebook. What is, if you were to describe the film in 3 words, how would you do it? Elle, I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm going to start down at the bottom again. It's a hard question.
Awesome, go see it.
Ballsy.
Go see it.
Ballsy. ballsy, fun,
Glamorous,
Powerful.
dangerous,
Beautiful.
sexy.
sexy,
Happy.
dangerous. Yeah.
No. Intense.
Intense.
And you guys, you touched a little bit about heading to Georgia to kind of tap into that sort of undeveloped wildlife. We have Marcio David Ramayo from Bolivia asked, what was the most difficult thing about making this film? No gator attacks, nothing like that?
The weather was a little bit challenging in Georgia. We had some stuff where fog came in halfway through the scene, and then we had to put fog in through special effects to the rest of the scene, and we had, some technical problems. But had a great cinematographer in Bob Richardson who was able to do anything, and we had a top-notch crew, and these guys were game for anything. So when, hurdles came up, it was like, yeah, no problem, cool, we can do it. It was really easy.
That's incredible. What about you?
There were mosquitoes in Georgia. That's the only thing that was like a little bit of a canker sore.
Sure.
Because like if you're in the middle of shooting a scene and you just want to scratch, you sort of like, I'm wearing a dress. How did it get there? But other than that, it was fun.
Difficult? There wasn't anything difficult. The car, yeah. The car.
The
Chris
car.
had to learn how to drive those
Yeah.
cars.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
And
car.
look cool doing it.
And look cool. Yeah, that's true. The car was a pain in the ass.
It looked like a pain in
It was a
the ass.
pain in the ass because you're trying to be a cool gangster, you got the cigar, and you're nervous, and you can't get the car into gear.
Right.
So yeah, the car was a pain in the ass.
Sina, what about you?
The hardest part? I can't think of anything that was hard. I had the best time making this film. I loved it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the best time too.
Oh, I
make
got a
sure.
finger infection.
Oh,
Oh yeah, that's right.
That was
That was
finger
really
infection?
It was
bad.
disgusting.
It was gross.
I had like a 1930s manicure, and obviously at some point it was like overdone, and I got like a swollen. It was disgusting. So I start smoking with my right hand, and halfway through it's like switches to my left because I had this monster finger.
Oh my god.
It was hideous.
amazing. Thank you guys so
Thank
very
you.
much for the
Thank
time.
you.
Live by Night opens in theaters January 13th. Thank you very much.
All right, bye.